A young man was falsely accused by a local fire department deputy chief of pulling a gun on the chief and his son and threatening him at a convenience store. A false allegation that led to a traffic stop by the cops, guns drawn, roadblock, and a host of felony charges. The biggest problem? When the young man drew his gun, it was in self-defense. Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today's story comes to you from Prescott, Arizona. A young man named Matthew Masucci is finally sharing his story after being cleared of wrongdoing in a self-defense incident that occurred 2 years ago in 2023. On the story of a drunken deputy fire chief, he was held at gunpoint by multiple cars full of cops, arrested on 2 felony counts of aggravated assault, 2 counts of committing a felony with a firearm, and in the interrogation, when the man pleaded the 5th, the cops told him the entire incident was caught on camera, proving his guilt. Except that was a lie. Later, once the man was cleared, the police's spokesperson told local ABC 15, being biased doesn't happen. Luckily, this man hired the Attorneys for Freedom law firm, the very same people who bring you the Attorneys on Retainer program. Since they are a regular sponsor on this channel, I like to bring you success stories from them whenever I can. Now, this young man had not been signed up with the Attorneys on Retainer program, but since he hired the firm for his case, he still got an amazing team of lawyers on his side that specialize in self-defense cases. As for the Attorneys on Retainer program, if you sign up with them, you don't have to wait until you're in cuffs and having to scramble to find a lawyer to take your case. They have you covered so long as you are a member and acted in good faith. It doesn't matter if the law tries to hit you with felony charges, like in this case, or you were in a gun-free zone, or are even technically a prohibited person. And this year they added a bunch of new features like civil liability coverage, red flag defense, education, and record expungement. Now, if this is something that you think you're interested in and not already a member, their prices will go up for all new members next year. So if you are looking for coverage and want to lock in the current price, head on over to my link down in the description and use code LURIDOL to get $50 off your individual sign-up fee. So, how did this happen? On the evening of July 16th, 2023, Matthew, aged 25 at the time, pulled into a gas station and went to the convenience store to grab some snacks for him, his girlfriend, and a friend who was visiting. The young man was a construction worker and a groundskeeper for a school for nonverbal autistic children. He chatted with the cashier, who he saw often because he went there a lot, and as he left, he noticed another car pull in next to his, directly in front of the entrance.
When you left, you were looking inside their vehicle, and my car was parked adjacent to that, maybe a space over.
He said that he noticed 2 men in the car watching him. As he went to his own vehicle, one of the men, much larger and clearly intoxicated, got out of the car aggressively and confronted him. That car belonged to the Para family, buying beer on their way home from a funeral. The man who got out of the car was Dustin Para, the deputy fire chief, who, by the way, has been promoted since all of this happened. The 2 men had never met each other, and Matthew, knowing he didn't want a fight and his car was right there, continued to his car. Nonetheless, Para followed Matthew, where he blocked the driver's side door and physically prevented Matthew from closing it. At this point, Matthew felt threatened, rightfully so, and got his gun out of the center console and held it at a low ready position. Para then started yelling, "What, are you going to shoot me?" and declaring that he was the deputy fire chief. As if that's an excuse. Eventually, his family came to restrain him, and after getting shoved around, the family were able to finally pull him away enough for Matthew to get in his car and leave. Matthew didn't call the cops because, in his mind, the altercation had been avoided. But Para's wife did. She called the police, said Matthew had pulled a gun on her husband, and made sure to tell the cops what her husband's position was. Para's wife had been in the store at the same time as Matthew. During the 911 call and follow-up interview, which she gave that same night, she claimed as Masucci was walking out, he was giving looks to my children, who were in the front 2 seats driving their parents home, Milan Para said. He started talking shit to my son, and my son said, "What?" back. Then my husband jumped out of the back seat, and the guy went and grabbed a frickin' 9mm and pointed it at my husband's heart. When the guy realized Dustin was fire, he freaked out and sped out. She also claimed that her husband had been trying to act as a peacekeeper between Matthew and her son, and that Matthew had walked around their car while threatening Mr. Para with a gun and threatening to beat up their 15-year-old son, which, she said, he specifically referred to as a 15-year-old in the interview, despite having never met the family. It is a little suspicious that he might have accurately guessed this kid's age in the dark, having never met them. But obviously, this is not the biggest discrepancy between the two stories. And the security footage from the gas station shows that the Para's explanation of the event was a lie. Matthew did, in fact, go straight to his car, and it was Mr. Para who confronted him and attempted to stop him from leaving. But the footage was dark, it was grainy due to it being nighttime, and is inexplicably missing the first 29 seconds of the confrontation. Nevertheless, a combination of the cameras from inside and outside still showed Matthew going straight to his car, not confronting Para with a gun at all, who, remember, was parked right in front of the entrance in full view. But the police did not try to contact Matthew. They did not interview Dustin Para that night either, noting in the report that he was too upset and drunk to provide an interview. But drunk and angry, he personally called up a local detective and demanded an investigation. This detective apparently didn't even look at the security footage. Instead, the cops just took Dustin Para's word for it on his authority, and the cops used their flock system, which is a license plate reader system with different readers throughout the city, and used that to track Matthew's car. 4 days later, with no previous attempts to contact him, a bunch of cops conducted a traffic stop and swarmed him with their guns drawn. And not just handguns, my friends. 8 cars of cops showed up with shotguns and ARs.
On the way home, I get 2 cars behind me. I wasn't breaking any traffic laws, so I didn't quite know why I was being pulled over, but I pulled over immediately. Nobody approached my vehicle. Then I'm looking in the mirrors and they tell me, put your hands on the ceiling. So I put my hands on the ceiling. 2 cars turns to 4 cars, turns to 8 cars. I hear brakes squealing, they shut the road down, and I'm just being told to sit there with my hands on the ceiling. Eventually,
they're speaking to you through a loudspeaker?
Yeah, over a microphone.
Gotcha.
And I see they have large weapons pointed at me, Every one of them are armed. And they exit my brother out of the vehicle from the passenger side. They exit him first. And I was, doing everything that they said, but at one point they had asked me to exit the vehicle, and I was seat buckled. So then I yelled back, I got my seatbelt on, and they couldn't hear me. So then when I reached to do it, they shouted, don't move. And I could have been shot at any point. Biggest thing with that is at one point when I exited the vehicle and I was walking backwards, he said to lift my shirt. So I went to lift the bottom of my shirt and he said, no, stop, from the neck, But that wasn't the request you just gave me.
Where first they tell you, put your hands outside the vehicle, then they tell you put your hands on the ceiling of the vehicle and then have you hold there for minutes. Not just seconds, but minutes.
10 minutes, I feel.
Yeah. And they have your brother, your close friend, get out of the vehicle. And then again, when you're trying to get out of the vehicle, you're in your seatbelt. Also another problem. And then they tell you, climb out over the center console and get out the passenger door.
Right.
Again, just bizarre stuff that if you don't know who's in that car and what kind of physical condition they're in, if they can even do that in a small car.
Right.
So it just was a very, very dangerous situation. And I know that you didn't know this at the time, that as you're watching the video with law enforcement, this is all on dash cam and body cam, multiple times they're talking about getting lethal force. One officer is saying, get lethal, get lethal. Another officer is saying, do we want lethal? Like, yes, get lethal.
And they arrested me. They said, do you know what this is for? I said, no. They said, it's for an incident that happened at the gas station a week ago.
They arrested him, searched his car, and took him into an interrogation where they told him that his side of the story didn't matter, that they had video proof of Para's claims, and that he was being charged with 4 felonies. Those charges were eventually scrapped, but only to be refiled as 3 felonies instead of 4. He was held for 3 days and faced 60 years in prison. The Prescott police even put out the following press release about the initial incident. Officers arrived on scene to learn that the male suspect exited the store and for no apparent reason became verbally aggressive, cursing and yelling at a family that was parked next to him. Included in the family was a 15-year-old and a 17-year-old who were seated in the vehicle. The father of the children intervened, telling the suspect to stop cursing at his children. The suspect then produced a handgun and pointed it at the chest of the father as well as his children. Matthew's first attorney, a local recommended by the bail bondsman, told him the case had been dismissed, but then he never got the paperwork. Suddenly, months later, the attorney switched tunes and said that he was going to prison and there was no way out of it, largely due to Para's status. Knowing he was innocent, he didn't accept that, and that's how he ended up hiring the attorneys for freedom. It turned out that his previous attorney had also never bothered to look at the security footage. In fact, he'd told Matthew that there was no footage. His new lawyers got the security footage, were able to enhance it through a forensic video person, and prove Matthew's innocence. But it still took 2 years from start to finish. All because the cops took someone else's word for it, presumably because he was a big deal in town. But once the attorneys for freedom got on the case, they were able to find a forensic expert to clean up the grainy footage. They brought it right to the county prosecutor and watched it with him at their office.
The inside video shows Matt at the counter when the chief's SUV pulls up. The wife walks in, Matt walks out, and you can see him go straight to his car. Then, a few seconds later, the chief gets out. That's almost exactly when the outside video restarts. Matt is in his car with his girlfriend. The door is open. As the chief comes forward, his son tries to stop him, but the chief pushes his son, then moves towards Matt. Matt and his attorneys say the chief held the door open, refusing to let Matt leave, and then came forward, threatening him. Now let's back it up a few seconds, back to when the chief pushes his son. That's when Matt's attorneys say he grabbed a gun from the center console, held it at the quote, low ready, and told everyone to back off. When they did, he shut the car door and drove away.
When that guy's in your door and angry and belligerent and won't let you close the door and won't let you leave, that's when you displayed your firearm. Is that the way it worked?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you ever point it at him?
No, sir.
Okay. But at that moment in Arizona, with that guy in your face, attacking you essentially, you could have shot and killed this man.
I was aware of that.
Okay. Why didn't you do that, Matthew?
That's something, I don't want to end the man's life.
And guess what? The charges were immediately dismissed because 1, Para's account was a lie, and 2, Matthew was in his vehicle, which is protected under Arizona's castle doctrine and legal display laws. He retreated to his car, was cornered in it, and displayed his firearm in a non-threatening manner, all of which align with lawful self-defense rather than aggravated assault. As for the police, local ABC 15 has reached out to everyone involved, and no one, not the cops, not Para, would respond. Eventually, ABC 15 went to the police headquarters in person and finally got a spokesperson. That spokesperson, Lieutenant Novak, defended the traffic stop, saying they did it the way they did for officer safety, that they knew Matthew was dangerous because he had a gun. But, so dangerous that they waited 4 days to corner him. The investigator asked why they didn't try to contact Matthew beforehand and get his side, to which Novak replied, I don't know if they didn't have his information, didn't have his phone number, so that part I don't know why. This day and age with the technology, the vehicle was found and officers went out there and that's how they made the stop. When asked again why they didn't even try to call him, Novak said, sometimes it's not that easy to find a phone number. But ladies and gentlemen, records show that at the time of the stop, the police already had Matthew's name, full name, license plate, driver's license photo, all of the information that they would get through the RMV, and his social media profiles. Yet, they somehow didn't have a phone number. or an address to go contact him. When questioned about the fact that Pera's story didn't match up with the surveillance video at all, and asked if all it took was an accusation in order to be stopped and pulled out of your car at gunpoint, Novak said, of course not. Based on what they believe they saw in the video, they had probable cause to make the arrest. He also claimed that there was no bias in the case, that the investigation, or lack thereof, happened the way it did because it's a small, tight-knit community where everyone knows everyone. And because Pera knew everyone, Matthew had only lived in the area for a couple years, that was why Pera knew an officer to call up personally. Novak said that's often how things work there because it's like calling up your buddy. Matthew apparently did not have the correct buddies. Meanwhile, in the time that it took to prove his innocence, Matthew lost his job and his home. He was blacklisted in Prescott, and the ordeal hurt his reputation enough that he was forced to move out of state to find work. Even then, he said he would do well in job interviews only for employers to Google him and see the accusations against him. He still hasn't had his gun rights restored or his firearms returned. His lawyers are still actively working on that. And I said earlier in the video, for all of this, Dustin Pera was promoted. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, that is it for this video. You guys know the drill for all the algorithm things. Please like, share, and subscribe if you are new here. Ring that notification bell and drop a comment down below. And as always, thanks for tuning in. Stay safe out there, and happy shooting.